May not be.
All I wanna do is get them out there.
I bet not.
I got nothing personal at stake with it.
Good evening, everybody. Call this meeting of the work session of the Monroe City Council to order for January 7th, first meeting of 2020. Let the record reflect that all members of council are present. I'm going to refer to Mr. Probst for the city administrator report.
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing major to report. I just had a couple tidbits of info to share with you. I found this interesting that I had an analysis sent to me about SPLOS collections, and Walton County is up year over year from 2018 at a 17.3% increase, which far outpaces the rest of this region. So that tells me two things. One, we've got more people shopping here at home in Walton County and Monroe. And two, there are far more visitors coming from our surrounding counties and spending money in Monroe and Walton County. So I just thought that was a pretty neat bit of information, and that's 2 years in a row that we've been in double-digit percentage increase in SPLOST remittances to us. The only other little note, kind of want to congratulate one of our auditors, Joel Black. He's often made the reports here to us, so, for our annual CAFR and audit review. If you see him at any GMA events or whatnot, congratulate him on being appointed chair of the GASB board. That's the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. That's a nationwide entity, and that is a very big deal. So basically, they write the rules for all of governmental accounting. And Joel's been good to us, done a lot of free training for our staff, does a lot of training at our governmental conferences, but it says a lot that we're audited by literally the best in the business here. So just wanted to pass that along. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Moving to the central services update, Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, sir. Couple of quick things on the police station, municipal court building. I'm actually going to provide that update in the public safety section and kind of tell you where we stand on that. Jumping over to marketing side a little bit, facilities, grounds, kind of what we're doing. Got a meeting tomorrow, or actually Thursday, with Martin Bazone, who we had brought in to do a lot of photography of buildings, facilities, events, everything that we've got going on in Monroe. He's right now got a database of a little over 5,000 photographs that we're going to start going through, and looking forward to that. But during that process, I'm going to actually kind of lean on council a little bit and some of the ladies in customer service and some of the other directors to help us kind of pick out some images that we're going to then use our current frames and whatnot that are around the building, and kind of change some things out so that we've got Monroe represented in City Hall, different facilities. So, and as we make progress on that, I'll bring that back to you and show you some of the results. The other thing I wanted to quickly highlight, in 2019, our 3-person grounds crew actually picked up 22,000 pounds of trash around the city. I thought that was fairly impressive, while also cutting 465 acres roughly. So they managed to stay busy. Last thing, we're interviewing interns this week from the University of Georgia, the same program that we had gotten Sydney from last year, and I had just included a couple of the points that they have to kind of meet within that program to qualify. Some of it was that they have to have a history of overcoming unique challenges. They're a first-generation college student. Members of low-income families, they reside in rural or inner-city locations and raised in a single-parent household. So it's a good program that gets somebody at the college age kind of involved in local government. And hopefully we can have that selection made, and I can introduce them at next month's meeting. So, and hopefully they do as good as Sydney did in her time. I'll be glad to take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Bailey?
Chris, quick question.
Yes, sir.
Have you looked into doing that at the high school instead of at the UGA?
We did. the way we got UGA, they actually approached us, and we got into that. And then we have looked at some of the local high schools. I know we looked at George Walton. We had actually reached out to Monroe at one time. They just didn't have anyone. I think George Walton might have had one person that was looking, and I believe they're actually at the police department, if I'm not mistaken, RV. I'm going on just kind of what I've heard.
I'm thinking that they going to Joe Walton, they ain't gonna be low income.
But as far as Monroe, I wasn't aware that anyone was looking for local government. Okay, so Sadie's got a couple?
I've had two in the past.
Okay, so in the past, but yeah.
I think Jada,
Yeah.
Jada worked with you, right? She's outstanding.
So yeah, if there's ever, I think we budgeted for 4 this year, so if there's ever any that are looking, we'll always interview and kind of do it through a different part of the program.
Thank you, Chris. I did want to mention how nice it looked inside, how well they decorated in City Hall. I saw Les out decorating Christmas trees. Downtown was great, so that's Public Works. I mean, December in Monroe was just beautiful.
And the trees, we did the trees this year, is that right? Did the city do the trees, or did we contract that out? We contracted.
Contracted it.
Well, they, to me, they look better this year than they've looked in a long time.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Moving to committee information, to let you know before we jump into the finance, 2 things. Our committees have very minimal changes this year. We added to the Parks Committee, to Myosha's group, and I switched, I think, David and Myosha from Airport and I don't know where we put David, Public Safety. Also, got a notice today that we won that budget award, Beth. So, got something across my desk, and I'll get that to you tomorrow. But moving to the Finance Committee, to Wayne Adcock, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This time, Ms. Thompson will give our monthly finance report.
Thank you, Mr. Adcock. You have before you the November financial status report. I won't go into it a whole lot of detail. Our auditors started their pre-planning work last Friday. They were here most of the day. Everything went well with that, and they will be here for 2 weeks, beginning February 2nd, for their field work. So the finance department will be busy for the next 2 or 3 months working on that. After all year-end entries and accruals are entered, we may have some budget amendments to bring before you. They won't all be negative, they won't be negatively impacted. We actually will probably have some budget amendments to increase revenues because our revenues exceeded what we had actually budgeted, so which was a good thing. We are in the beginning stages of designing a policy for lack of better terms, budget billing, but it's actually going to be called average monthly payment in our system. So we're looking into other cities and other utilities and their policies, how they do that, so we can start implementing that mid-year after we've been on the Tyler system for a year. I wasn't aware of the budget award, but we did receive the CAFR and the PAFR award. I just got notice of it. The CAFR award, this is our 17th year, and the PAFR, which is a popular annual financial reporting, is the 15th year that we've received those awards from GFOA. Last but not least, I just want to bring to you some percentages of property tax collections. This is as of December. I know this report that you have in front of you is November, but as of December, the property tax collections were at 99.7% of what was budgeted, which is great. So that tells us that having the county bill and collect on the county tax bill has actually done better for us. We're actually at 98% of the original digest, so that says a lot. But if y'all have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Beth. Next item on the agenda is GMIB's stated defined benefit retirement plan amendment updates.
Thank you, Mr. Adcock. This is just kind of a standard amendment that we are required to do as part of a GMEB's defined benefit plan member. Essentially, federal law changed, IRS required rewrite of a few rules, specifically around compensation and caps that we can distribute through the plan each year, how we calculate days of service in the plans, and how we do in-service distributions and things of that nature without getting too far into the weeds. It's fairly standard stuff here, but it's just an IRS requirement that all pension plans have to update this new language. So what you have before you is a fairly in-depth contract that GMEBS has gone through over the last several months and submitted to all of the participants.
We need a motion from the committee.
Yes, sir.
We need a motion from the committee to recommend to pass the amendment to full council on next Tuesday.
Second.
Have a motion and second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll present that to full council next week.
Thank you, sir.
And that's all we have, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Moving to Mr. Garrett, Airport.
Chris Bailey?
Yes, sir, thank you. The one kind of update I had was the 2019 fuel sales. We actually brought in $115,000 in total revenues in avgas sales alone. It was our largest profit year on the farm, the fuel farm, since its opening back in 2015, a little over $10,000. And two, I wanted to, we'd always talked about bringing traffic into the airport, and that was the purpose of the avgas farm. We've actually sold almost 130,000 gallons since the late part of 2015. The total, you were never going to make a ton of money off of avgas. It was to create traffic. But our total profits after cost, everything we spent putting that in, is almost $20,000 over that period of time. So it's actually good while managing to keep our prices competitive with every surrounding airport. So just kind of want to thank the council for doing all that and allowing us to do that and doing the other things that we do at the airport. That's gradually building it and turning it into closer to a profit center. So I'll be glad to take any questions.
We'll talk about the runway
Yeah. Okay, so we had originally been approved to do a crack seal on the runway. And after looking over things and what the state had actually had planned for us, and about the next 4 years was a complete rehab of the runway, complete paving project. So what was budgeted, the $155,500 was for that crack seal, the design of it and everything. But we're actually, after we'd met with the state and changed everything, this project request is for the design and everything from bidding to contract administration by GMC for the complete runway rehabilitation. And it's actually for $76,954.06, of which we're only responsible for 5%. So we're responsible for just under $4,000. So it's a great project. And it's one that we've already put in for the grant for the actual paving of everything. And we need this to move forward as kind of the final component to proceed with that project. So asking for approval of that.
So we need a motion and second
Yes,
going into next month. Make a motion heading to the next week's meeting to be approved. Need a second? We will move this into next week meeting for approval from the whole council. Would that be all, Chris?
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. Public Works, Mr. Dickinson.
Mr. Smith, solid waste report.
Thank you, Mr. Dickinson. The transfer station project's still active. Our target date to complete those, get those done is by early spring. Just want to highlight transfer station tonnage. We had an increase over 838 tons compared to November 2018. And the extended hours, as of December the 13th, we've generated a surplus of little over $45,000. And the last thing I got, the collection routes are back on schedule. We had a busy holiday. We're still experiencing some growing pains with the automated truck, mainly on the customer service side, that we're going to clear up. But however, by the end of the day, it's going to be a positive impact on our delivery service. So if you want to have any questions, I'm glad to answer.
All right, it appears there are no questions. Streets and Transportation, Mr. Still.
Thank you, Mr. Dickinson. Just highlighting a few areas from the report from November. Fleet Maintenance Division completed 50 units of work, either preventative or corrective maintenance. Sign and Markings Division completed just over 100 for the month. Our Street Division has been out doing some winter maintenance as we get into these colder months. Potholes become more prevalent. We're out trying to stay on top of those, as well as doing some utility cut repairs and patching. The leaf truck is out every day since it's been out on the route. They've collected 206 tons of leaves. So you think about how much one leaf weighs. That's 412,000 roughly pounds of leaves that we picked up just in the month of December. That is equivalent to what we picked up January, February, and March of beginning of the year. So that tells me the bulk is over with, so we'll be wrapping it up hopefully within the next month. Just depends on how they come out. You know, as they get to the curb, we'll continue to pick them up, and then that crew will turn around and get back on the right of way as far as keeping it mowed. I will highlight one of the things Danny mentioned with the transfer station drainage project. We have acquired some dirt that will allow us to finish the backfill portion of that job, hopefully weather permitting within the next month. So that'll be one Danny can get checked off of his list, and I'll be glad to take any questions.
All right, it appears there are no questions. Thank you. That's all we have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Little, Utilities.
Thank you, Mayor. First item is the monthly electric and telecom report. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Little. Go into some of the projects that are underway. Spring Street, you've probably seen Service Electric out there working. They are alleying out the existing wire, which means putting it in a safe position where they can work in and around that wire. That should be completed by the first or middle of next week, depending on weather. Once that's done, they will be setting the new ductile iron poles, interspaced between the concrete poles of MEAG, and we'll start pulling new wire in about a week and a half, I would hope. Project's going well. It's going safe. That's the big thing. DOT shut them down during the holidays, and then the weather has been a hindrance to everyone lately. Stone Creek is a little more than 90% complete now. They're in the process of setting just the little feed-through cabinets for the individual homes and the telecom in-ground vaults. So that's moving along very well, the contractors. First time we've ever used this contractor, and they're doing a wonderful job. Big thing I want to talk about, we've, during retransmission consent, which is something we do every year per the FCC rules, we have to negotiate and get happy with the broadcasters out of Atlanta. We're going to have to add a number of new channels, no new cost, but a number of new channels to the system. Didn't want to do that during the holidays. The main reason, because people are going to have to rescan their TV. That engineering is about complete. I will shoot y'all out a list. We'll get it out on social media before we do it. But there's going to be some channels moving around, but it's a federally required deal. If we wanted to carry the off-air channels, we have to do what they ask us to do. And I'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Questions? Let's move on to water, sewer, gas, stormwater.
Thank you, Mr. Little. Just a couple of updates on some projects, rounding out 2019. We've completed the gas main install for Grand Haven, Phase 2, which is out on Monroe, Jersey Road. We also have got the sewer installed on Village Avenue. As soon as this rain gets out of here and allow us to finish up another water project, we'll finish up the water and gas along that street as well. The CDBG, the contractor's in town, he's getting started. So you'll see him over there on South Madison and Mears and all the other streets there around the old mill. And then we had, one of our CIP items was delivered in December. That's our water valve exercising trailer. We took delivery of it. And I have one emergency purchase I wanted to make you aware of. It came up yesterday. The sewer plant, we, due to the rain, we're experiencing some issues with disposal of our sludge. We can't land apply it, and our beds are filling up quick. So we found a portable belt press with a hefty price tag of $19,500 a month. We're gonna try our best to make the best use of it this month and next month, and hopefully we can get rid of it. So hopefully the rain can get on out of here and we can start land applying again, but we'll have all the details on the next week's, I guess, for a vote, but just want to make you aware of that emergency purchase. It's set to be delivered Friday. Hopefully start up on Monday. If you got any questions, I'll be more than happy to try to answer them.
Anybody have questions for Rodney? If not, let's tell us about this GEMA generator grant application.
Yes, there was some FEMA money available whenever Matthew. There was some leftover money available. I think most of it was the counties down south. But anyway, they made it available to other counties here in Georgia. And we were putting in for 4 generators. One of these would be at the river, which would allow us to pump water from the reservoir or the river, either one, to the plant in case of a natural disaster. And it would take longer for Brian or EMC, either one, to get the power back up. And then also 3 for the water plant, which would actually allow us to make water if such event should take place. Currently, the way we're set up, the power's out, we can monitor the wells and the tanks with 1 generator. It's a really small one. And then we have one that we can pump the water from the clear wells. So we can't actually make any water. We can just, so anytime we have a storm or something major coming, we work overnight, make sure everything's full, so that it does give us extra time. But this would allow us to make water in those instances. If awarded, our match would be $289,850. I think the totals 1.159. So we're asking for your permission to let the mayor sign this paperwork and let us apply for.
Rodney, is it your expectation that we'll be awarded all 4 of those?
There's probably a good chance, yeah. I think Banks County just got 4, and there's another county just got 6, so I don't see why we wouldn't.
Another thing it allows us to do is reprioritize our response during a storm. Right now, our priority is the water plant. Get that water plant back up, because the firefighters can't fight fires. The hospital's useless without water, so it would allow us to go other places, because he could still be making water.
And is there any installation cost involved?
I'm sure they would be, and whether that's included or
I
not.
think it was included in
sure.
his estimate. Yeah, there's an estimated installation cost.
There was, okay.
Yeah.
We'll go back and look.
That's included.
That was included in there. There'll be some annual maintenance of each generator, but it's something that we can reasonably budget for each year.
Have to be contracted.
Yes, sir.
Any other
Chair, I make the motion that we submit to the full council next week the authorization to proceed with this grant.
Motion by Mr. Larry Bradley, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Adcock. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? We will recommend that full council. Thank you, Mayor, that's all we got.
Thank you, Mr. Little. Moving to public safety, Mr. Larry Bradley.
Chief Owens, you have the fire department report for us?
I do. Over the month of November, our numbers are pretty steady on that. Not much change there. Main things just wanted to make note of is, we did assist with the adult leadership Walton class. We are, those of you who haven't seen, are starting our recruit volunteer program back up again this year. So, if you know of anyone interested in the fire service, tell them to please put in an application. And as far as our full-time firefighters, we're starting our FAO, which is basically our driver operator program this month. I'd be happy to answer any questions y'all have.
Anyone have any questions or comments? Then we'll move on to the police department then, Chief Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Larry. As you can see, our calls for service was about 1,610. Officers did conduct 3,100 area checks throughout the city. And our Part 1, Part 2 crimes were up in November, which is pretty standard. November, December, we usually see an increase in thefts and stuff. We participated in 5 different community events, and some significant cases that were investigated that we were able to bring to a close and resolve was, one was a cruelty to children battery case. We were able to make an arrest on that, and we actually made an arrest on a big felony shoplifting out at Home Depot case. And our the Joint Ops unit that works for narcotics and high crime areas, they conducted 3 search warrants and were able to take 5 firearms off the streets here in the city of Monroe. One of the things I wanted to mention, and I know it was too late for us to get it on the agenda this go round, was we're doing another canine purchase, and the funds for the purchase of the dog were donated from a citizen in the county here, and it'll be on the agenda for next week for an item of action, but it's going to be for out-of-state travel and the purchase of the dog and all the training and equipment associated with that. That will be on the agenda next week, just to let you guys know. We got the call from Alabama Canine on Friday of last week to let us know that a dog that was going to be meeting the needs, what we're looking for. We're looking for a dual-purpose canine, which means it'll do tracking, patrol, and bite work and stuff. And so that the handler, kind of filters out what we're looking for in that. So he called us last Friday and said, hey, the dog's here, and the next training scheduled date would be February 3rd. And I know it was short notice to get it on the agenda for today, but you will see that next week on the item of actions. And lastly, I wanted to, we just had 3 officers graduate last month, and one of our officers that's just started with the police department is in the back of the room here, Officer Brandon Scruggs. Brandon, raise your hand. You may remember him from working down at Trading Place as well. So we're happy to have him. He's been a great hire, and he's learning what it means to be a police officer now. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Then we'll go to the next item on the agenda is we'll ask Mr. Bailey to give us an update on the plaza renovation.
Yes, sir, thank you. Our initial intention was to bring it before committee tonight for approval, or request of approval, but with the bid closing on December the 20th, it kind of put us in a tight schedule for hearing back from all the reference checks of the lowest bidders, reviewing the alternates to make sure everything was included that we had requested, and just the overall time frame of the project. So we just felt it more important to have everything completely in order before we come back so we can discuss details, sit down, and just go over what we actually want. I will say that the bids ranged anywhere on the base bid from $2.27 million to $3.3 million. So it was a decent spread, but there were 3 that were pretty close on the low end, and those are the 3 that Sizemore's going through reference checks and just basically reviewing everything in a 700-page bid document. So I'll be happy to answer any questions as best I can, but that'll be something that'll also come before council next week for an item of action and for us to review.
So Chris, if that comes before the council next week and it's approved by the council, what is the schedule now going forward?
We are looking at, we can essentially issue we'll go into contract discussions kind of with Sizemore along with whoever the low bidder is selected. Can issue them a notice to proceed. The timeline right now looks to be 8 to 12 months for completion of the project. And that's something to make sure that everything is in place. And we're trying to have Sizemore kind of hammer out that schedule for us to maybe shorten it, but I would expect something maybe around 8 months. So if we approve or discuss it next Tuesday, time you go into everything, maybe end of the year, maybe around Thanksgiving, we could actually have the facility completed inside and out. Don't hold me to that, but that's probably.
Anyone have any questions?
Is that just for the police department, or that's for the whole plant?
That's for what used to be Quality Foods for that renovation of that building for the police department, municipal court.
It's not the entire Walton Plaza element, it's for the old grocery store portion.
You talking about
The new
food line
portion.
Yeah, that's right, that's the quality.
Any other questions or comments? That's all we have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Officer Scruggs, welcome to the team. Thank you for being here. Planning and Code, Ms. Malcolm.
Mr. Kelly.
Don't call me late for dinner. All right, just some highlights from the November report for the code department. We had 32 permits written in that month. Things were kind of slowing down, but were by no means slow. We had 6 new businesses get licenses. 1 was closed. City marshals removed 76 signs from the roadway. They wrote 162 repair cleanup orders and did re-inspections, investigated 3 tampering cases and wrote 8 citations on those 3 cases, and completed 15 hours of post-training. There's more there with the Historic and Planning Commission for some variances and COA requests. If you have any questions about any of that or anything else, I'll be happy to answer them.
Do you have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patrick. Thanks, Lee. Economic Development, Mr. Bradley, Mr. Ross Bradley.
Ms. Crosby, would you like to share with us the monthly economic development report, please, ma'am?
Yes, thank you. The first thing to note on here is that the Downtown Development Authority, we came before council to discuss with you our plans beginning of 2017 about the LR Burger project, and we officially closed our portion and our involvement in December. So we are completely out of that project, and it's a success, it's open, but that was great for us to get every money that all the dollars we put in, to put it in the brownfield process and purchase it. DDA has that back now and are positioned to do another project. So thank you for your support in that. That went really well. Also just wanted to pass along holiday shopping season reports from our retailers. A number of our retailers who have locations in Monroe and other cities are able to give us comparable numbers, and Monroe has been outperforming other locations, so that's very encouraging, and probably one of the contributors to those SPLOST numbers going up, so that's great. We should continue to see more of that. We're working on the 2020 city event calendar. Hope to have those postcards completed and dates all finalized by next council meeting, and we'll start sending out those postcards like we do every year to the city and then neighboring communities to advertise our events. This year, with our Georgia Main Street annual assessment, they cycle all of the cities that are Main Street cities at the state through doing presentations for the Georgia Main Street office with the Department of Community Affairs. And this year, Monroe is a presenting city, so we'll be going to do a full presentation to the DCA staff. And following that, that's when they recommend communities for the Georgia Exceptional Main Street program, which we potentially could be eligible for that. So I'll give you updates after our presentation. And the last thing I wanted to invite all of you to, we'll have invitations to follow, but we're doing our annual sponsor reception and awards night for Downtown Awards on Monday, the 27th of January at 5:30 p.m. at the Wayfarer Event Hall. We typically give out 4 awards. We're adding a Sponsor of the Year award, and our board decides these. Golden Hammer is Renovation of the Year. We honor volunteers. We have so many amazing ones. We honor one every year that's just gone above and beyond. And we celebrate a Business of the Year that has shown incredible partnership and creative entrepreneurship in the city. So we'd love for you to be there to support and celebrate those businesses and volunteers and our sponsors that help make it possible. The Golden Hammer Award with renovations, just so you know, our sponsor revenue helps fund a facade grant program in downtown. And last year, we were able to award over $12,000 in facade grants to renovations. So that's a lot of buildings, and that's one of the big contributors to the changes that we've seen around downtown. So thank you. Be happy to answer any questions.
Moving on to our second agenda item, it's 2020 Next Site funding. Mr. Crowley?
This is the annual renewal of our contract with Nextsite to market Monroe to chain retail stores to retail recruitment for the city of Monroe. They are currently working very closely with MAB for their sites that they have there, and they continue to give us updated demographic reports and represent the city at retailer conferences throughout the year around the nation. It's a 3-year contract. This is the 3rd year of it.
Need a motion, right?
Well, I'll entertain a motion for the 2020 Next Site funding.
Motion to approve?
I got a motion by Lee, do I have a second? Second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll recommend that full council next week.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sadie. Moving to Parks, Ms. Crawford.
Thank you. We'll turn over to Logan.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. Couple things to note. One, we finally got our letter of intent from the property owner of the railroad so that we can add that to the application for the Rails to Trails program through the Georgia Department of Natural Resources. So we're hopeful on that one now that everything has been turned in. I think we'll hear something in the next few months, hopefully. Secondly, as far as parks go, Chris Bailey and his staff member overseeing parks has been doing full assessments of the parks. I don't know if you want to elaborate on any of that. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, we've spent the last couple of weeks going around kind of just essentially looking everything over and seeing what we've got to deal with on some of the ones that we haven't had the responsibility of maintaining over the last 10, 20 years. That being Matthews, Hammond, Pilot, trying to keep a kind of an eye on things to make sure that the county's still maintaining. I know grass cutting, I know there's just trash collection, meeting people that are actually at the parks when we go there, figuring out what facilities are still functional, what still exists, what doesn't exist, and just trying to put together a plan to bring these up to some level of par once we kind of get this agreement in place. I know, for Matthews especially, the paving, the entrance, additional trash cans, trash collection, on the backside of the dam, working on that area, cleaning up debris. Hammond's gonna be the same thing, kind of assessing those facilities, figuring out what condition your tennis courts are in, just your different fields, paths. Pilot is, fixing playground equipment, making sure, that you're not gonna, I figure if the board can hold me stepping on it, it'll probably hold a child that's playing on it. So just essentially trying to make things safe and make it presentable until we jump into this overall larger master plan and figure out what the most effective way is to start accomplishing those goals. So that's kind of what we've spent time doing.
Thank you. So that kind of leads us into the item here before the committee, request for termination of portions of the 2003 intergovernmental agreement of park properties with Walton County. So at the same time I was drafting this, the county went ahead and sent me a termination or partial termination agreement of that lease agreement from 2003 for their parks. Verbally, they've already, said a year ago that they were no longer interested in maintaining the parks. I think we all know that. But this just kind of solidifies it here. So it's our request, but at the same time, asking for approval of what they have sent over as well, of the official termination agreement. And Mr. Couch has reviewed that in depth, so he found it to be appropriate as it pertains to the termination of those provisions of the 2003 agreement. This means that we will have to start maintaining it all. Grass, trash pickup, general maintenance, but I don't think that's going to be a hard thing to do. Essentially what Chris was talking about is stabilizing the parks we have in inventory now, and then we'll start really spending some money on them all.
What about the Nile Recreation Center?
That one was done separately. So in 2003, that was part of the original agreement. Sometime after that, I have to find that original agreement. It was given over to the county in full, as I understand it. So we haven't terminated that one. They still use it for recreational programs. As the 2003 agreement reads, once the county stops for 6 months providing any recreation at the parks, really it reverts to us, but we're just trying to make it an official document that, hey, we both acknowledge that we're going to take back over our parks. And this was a 50-year agreement, so we got, 16, 17 years into it.
Okay, do we need any?
Yes, I need to get some action from the committee to refer that to full council next week.
We have a motion for agenda for next week.
Make a motion, we approve the request for termination of portions of the 2003 IGA of park properties, Mr. Walton.
Second.
You all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? This is for agenda for next week, on next week's calendar.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. Items for discussion, application of spirituous liquors and beer and wine on-premise consumption. Lindsay Garrett, post number 64 of the American Legion. Mr. Stone?
Yes, they're requesting the liquor and beer and wine on premises, and it's at the location of 218 Cherry Hill. Application has been forwarded to legal, if you have any questions.
Are there any questions? Moving to application of beer and wine on-premise consumption, Addison's Wonderland. Mr. Stone?
Yes, this is beer and wine on premises for the Allison Wonderland. Again, the package has been reviewed and sent on towards legal for their review.
Thank you. I'm going to come back to you in 1 second. Application beer and wine package sales, The Market.
Yes, the Market, again, this is off of North Masson Avenue. We've reviewed the package. There was a question on the accuracy of the package. It was corrected and forwarded on to legal. If you have any questions, we'll answer those as well.
Question on that one, on the form that shows the fees. I don't understand on this one which one they're doing. I'm not sure, the thing about the nonprofit private club, I don't think that's it, is it? What?
That was the error that has been corrected.
Okay, it's been changed.
Been changed.
Good, thank you.
The next one, the application beer and wine package sales, Quick Pick Food Mart. Mr. Stone?
Yes, this too has requested for the beer and wine package sales at the Quick Pick Food Mart on North Madison Avenue, and that too has been reviewed and sent to legal.
Thank you. Are there any questions about all of the beer and wine consumption? Hearing none, resolution, open records officer, Mr. Probst.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a resolution that we do annually to appoint open records officer, which is city administrator, and the city clerk serving as the alternate open records officer, but either can respond.
Any questions or comments? Moving to the second reading of the Fire Protection and Prevention Ordinance Amendment.
Yes, so as we discussed last month, this will be reading number 2 of an ordinance that basically amends several provisions in our Code of Ordinances to allow for in-house fire marshal services capabilities, so that we're not always having to be at the beck and call of the state fire marshal, who is a relatively busy guy covering, I believe, 11 or 12 counties. So we can get a little bit more efficiency here in-house. So thanks to Chief Owens and his staff.
We'll have the second reading of that next week. Will it go into effect immediately?
Yes, we will codify that as soon as it's over.
Perfect. Thank you. Next, moving to items requiring action, the election of the vice mayor. I have a motion from Mr. Bradley.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we elect Mr. Adcock for vice mayor.
I'll second.
I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Larry Bradley, a second by Mr. Ross Bradley. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. Passes, motion carries. Next, appointment of the council representative to the DDA. I need a motion to appoint Ross Bradley as council representative to the Downtown Development Authority.
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Malcolm. Do you hear a second? Second by Mr. Nathan Little. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries, that passes. Next, resolution of support, funding letter for westbound on-ramp. Mr. Probst.
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, we've been working for several months now with MAB, who is doing the Monroe Pavilion Shopping Center on the north end of town off of Charlotte Route Boulevard and Highway 11. One of the key components to make this project work is having a westbound on-ramp to Highway 78 from Charlotte Route Boulevard. This is something that would be good long-term for the city, for traffic alleviation anyway, throughout that whole corridor. The mayor and I met with the top-level Georgia Department of Transportation folks a couple months ago in Atlanta with the developer to make the pitch as to why this is needed. I believe everyone agreed it is needed overall for traffic alleviation anyway, but the state wants the locals to put in a lot of money up front before they'll kick it in. So it's estimated that the total project cost will be $2.4 million. GDOT's going to contribute $1.4 million of that, so 58.3% of the total project. Walton County, we've been negotiating with them. They're willing to put in 14.6% or $350,000. And I'm recommending that we do the same match, $350 at 14.6%. And MAB is also going to throw in $300,000 to the project as well. Lee Rowell's here. If you have any questions on the specifics of that for him, but I think it's going to be a long-term solid project, and the dollars appear to be there from the state if we kind of act now, and the state is very supportive of these projects that have support from the locals and the developers, which this doesn't happen a lot. So with that good momentum, we're putting in this request if you so approve.
And the state was just thrilled that we, as the city, the county, the developer, all went in as a team. And I think they appreciated the cooperation, and they're excited to work with us. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Rowell? Hearing none, Mr. Rosenthal is not here. Jesse?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a resolution of the mayor and council of the city of Monroe, Georgia, supporting the construction and funding of an on-ramp from Charlotte Route Boulevard to westbound State Route 10, also known as US 78. Whereas the city of Monroe, Georgia, the city has been vested with substantial power to regulate the use of property within the city for the purposes of maintaining the health, moral safety, security, peace, and general welfare of the city. And whereas the city has the legislative power to adopt reasonable resolutions or regulations relating to property within the city for which no provision has been made by general law and which are not inconsistent with the Constitution of the state of Georgia or any charter provision applicable thereto. And whereas the city, the Georgia Department of Transportation, GDOT, Walton County, Georgia, Walton County, and MAB American Management LLC, MAB, have held discussions concerning the creation and construction of an on-ramp from Charlotte Royal Boulevard to westbound State Route 10, US 78, known as the Highway 78 On-Ramp Project, or project located in the city of Monroe, Georgia. And whereas the mayor, city council, and city staff have, as a part of studying the city's growth and traffic patterns, determined that the undertaking of the Highway 78 On-Ramp Project is in the best interest of the health and safety of its citizens. And whereas the city's funding support of the Highway 78 On-Ramp Project is contingent upon the city, Walton County, GDOT, and MAB entering into the necessary and contemplated intergovernmental agreements and memorandums of understanding concerning the same. And whereas MAB, developer of the retail shopping center adjacent to the Highway 78 On-Ramp Project, will solely fund all preliminary engineering and right-of-way acquisition costs of the project in accordance with GDOT project standards. And whereas the city's estimated contribution of funding for the construction of the Highway 78 On-Ramp Project shall not exceed $350,000. And whereas the mayor and city council have determined that it is in the best interest of the city for the city to engage in the necessary intergovernmental agreements and memorandums of understanding whereby the city shall participate in partially funding the construction of the Highway 78 On-Ramp Project in an amount not to exceed $350,000. And whereas all stated goals of this resolution are incorporated fully herein, now, therefore, be it resolved that the mayor and city council of Monroe do hereby support the creation, installation, and funding of the Highway 78 On-Ramp Project as follows. 1, the preamble of this resolution shall be considered to be and is hereby incorporated by reference as if fully set out herein. 2, pending the completion of all preliminary requirements by MAB, GDOT, and Walton County as contemplated herein, the city shall enter into the necessary intergovernmental agreements with Walton County and GDOT and the necessary memorandums of understanding with MAB for the construction of the Highway 78 On-Ramp Project. The total Highway 78 On-Ramp Project estimated construction cost is currently $2,400,000. Estimated funding participation level breakdowns for the Highway 78 On-Ramp Project shall be as follows. $1,400,000 paid by GDOT, being 58.3%. $350,000 paid by Walton County, being 14.6%. $350,000 paid by the city, being 14.6%, and $300,000 paid by MAB, being 12.5%. Pending the approval of and entry into the necessary intergovernmental agreements and memorandums of understanding and all required prerequisites to such, including but not limited to MAB's sole funding of all necessary preliminary engineering and right-of-way acquisition costs of the project, and full commitment to the Highway 78 On-Ramp Project by GDOT, Walton County, and MAB at the minimum funding levels as outlined herein, the city shall contribute a maximum amount of $350,000 to the Highway 78 On-Ramp Project, the same being the city's share and contemplated local match of the total project funding. That is the resolution, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Couch. Are there any questions? Mr. Couch? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to adopt the resolution.
Having a motion by Mr. Dickinson, is there a second? Second by Mr. Ross Bradley. Any discussion?
Is the funding for this coming from SPOS?
That'll be out of the SPOS program, the 2019 SPOS program, yes, sir.
Any additional questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries, that passes. Organizational chart amendments, Mr. Probst.
Thank you, Mayor. Circling back up to what was discussed last month, and at the request of council members to revisit this, the org chart amendments. The first one, I suppose, would be promotion of Ms. Crozick to Director of Economic Development as a department head position, with an annual salary of $80,000.
I would make the motion to designate the position of Director of Economic Development as the department head position.
I have a motion by Mr. Larry Bradley, a second, was that you, Ross? Yes, sir. Second by Mr. Ross Bradley. Any discussion? Hearing none, all,
I got a question.
yes, sir.
So now, the city administrator can decide who's gonna be department head?
This was just a recommendation to the council on something that I know several of you have discussed with me over the past several months, if not year.
This would be approved by the council.
This is not my approval.
Any additional discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign.
I'd like to make another motion to,
One second. Motion carries with one in opposition. Proceed, Mr. Bradley.
I'd like to make another motion that we adjust upward the salary of Ms. Crozick by $9,622 annually.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Larry Bradley, a second by Ms. Malcolm. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign.
I oppose.
Motion carries with one opposition.
Second item was, while this is generally an administrative move for full transparency as requested, the position of Assistant City Administrator, in charge of central services and acting as my delegate for overseeing general public works divisions, for Chris Bailey to be promoted to that position, salary increase of $8,645.40 annually.
Thank you. Do we need a motion and approval on that? Or is that
I would ask for a motion and approval.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
I have a motion to approve Chris Bailey as the City Administrator Assistant, correct, title? Motion by Mr. Dickinson. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Adcock. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Do you want to discuss the salary and go ahead and get that one done too? Or
He did.
Yeah,
He gave an increase.
rolled it in there.
It was included in the motion, Mr. Mayor.
I was busy writing. Okay, thank you. I do need a motion to adjourn.
Make that motion.
Easy for you to say. I have a motion by Mr. Ross Bradley. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Malcolm. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody.